will be handled by Alima-san from Japan. She is currently the Director of Asia Pacific Operations, Peregrine Global Services. Let me give a brief background about Alima-san. As an international consultant economist with more than several years of experience, Alima-san focuses on building strategic relationships with the institutions of higher education, accrediting associations, and organizations located in US and around the world, though she is currently in charge of Asia Pacific operations for this company. She actually works for this company located at Tokyo, and her major areas of expertise include consulting on higher education quality assurance, assessment, training, communications, global partnership, and leadership development. She holds a bachelor degree from arts from Bryn Mawr College and a master arts degree from Tufts University, both in economics, and honorary degree of a GBE from Idar University, Mongolia. Of course, she spent a lot of time in US, spent a lot of time in Washington, DC, almost for 15 years before moving to this role. And she is fluent in English, Russian, and Mongolian languages. And she can speak like me in Japanese, few words. She's moved to Japan and she is now learning Japanese. With this brief background, I welcome Alima-san for this session. And thanks the participants for joining at this hour. I would like to first introduce yourself and set your expectation to Alima-san before Alima-san takes over the session. Over to you, participants.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Shamsundar.
Dr. Shamsundar here, and I am from Tamil Nadu, India.
Nice to meet you, sir.
And I would like to thank the Zyme team for organizing this type of program and considering our expectations, and they are creating an excellent platform for us. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi sir. And Alima ma'am, thank you so much for spending your valuable time. I am just here to simply learn from you, and in future we will connect and we will work together. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Prabhu.
Hello, sir, am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Prabhu.
Hello, madam. I am Dr. Prabhu Shankar, professor at the DJ Academy of Managerial Excellence. It is in Tamil Nadu in India. So it's very happy to connect with you. We are all here to learn many insights about this accreditation. So thank you for giving an opportunity for us to attend this program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Dr. John, can you put your expectations about this session? You are on mute, Dr. John. Can you unmute Dr. John?
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning to you. Happy to meet you in this session. And I'm from Lead College of Management, Palakkad. It belongs to the state of Kerala. And we are in the process of accreditation. And as IQAC coordinator, I'm more responsible to know more things about this. So I'm very much eager in attending this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone from any other institution?
This is Dr. Savitri from DJ Academy for Managerial Excellence, which is located in a place called Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. We are also in the process of accreditation. So we are looking out for national as well as international accreditation. So we thought this would give us some insights and help us gain some knowledge on the processes. And that is the reason we are attending this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful, Dr. Savitri.
Good noon. This is Dr. Mohanamani from KCT Business School, Coimbatore. And like our institution, we are planning to go ahead for ACBSP accreditation. Dr. Jay Shankar and myself, both of us are attending this session and hope we'll have a good insights about this international accreditation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Over to you, Ali Masal. You can start.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ravi, for your kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for taking, of course, time out of your busy schedules in joining this wonderful seminar. And thank you, Dr. Andagopal and Dr. Ravi, for inviting me on this particular session to talk about the Global Business Assessment exam solution for measuring your learning outcomes. And also, as many of you are going through accreditation, to meet your accreditors' requirements related to assurance of learning, right? And so I'll go through the presentation, and if you have any questions, of course, feel free to type in your questions in the chat box or the question panel, and also raise your hand, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. I will plan to leave hopefully a good amount of time at the end for Q&A, so you will get to ask all your questions, and hopefully I'll provide the answers. But if you'll have some questions that are not answered during this session, I'll be more than happy to respond with you through email and answer them. And also, if your institution needs any one-on-one kind of sessions, again, I'd be happy to schedule that for you. So, this is my email address, Jamian Suren, and I'm glad to be working with you where you have long last names as well, unlike in some other parts of the world. So hopefully it will not be too much of a surprise, but it's my last name at Peregrine Global, Jamian Suren at peregrineglobal.com. And so let's start with learning outcomes, and especially since you are looking at accreditation, and for those of you who are seasoned, of course, quality assurance professionals, you're very familiar with learning outcomes and how important they are to higher education. But the idea is we want to be able to measure students' retained knowledge, right? And you want to better understand. So you make a promise to your students, you are going to depart them with certain levels of knowledge, right? So are you able to really deliver on those promises? And part of that is measuring students' retained knowledge. And then you also want to be able to have some data, and using that data, be able to make improvements into your curriculum, right? Into your educational programs, and also delivery of your programs so that your student learning are continuously improving. And then when you, of course, work with learning outcomes, measure them, and have continuous improvement plans, you are able to provide some transparency and accountability. And schools are, of course, expected to uphold engagement to your student learning from the beginning and make it transparent to all your... Oh, I just muted, sorry. That's okay, I muted that. Sorry about that. So yeah, we want to have all that student learning information available to all your stakeholders. So be it your students, the parents of your students, employers, and your partners and foundations and so forth. So most of you, of course, you're all familiar with formative versus summative assessment. And examples of formative assessment would be, of course, course level assessments, which are integral part of your learning processes. And you use it to evaluate your student learning and enhances your delivery of the learning to your students, and it contributes to improvements in your teaching. Now, program level assessment is what is a most common required of a business, programmatic, or international accreditors, right? And you conduct it at the end of a student's learning process. You're going to use it as part of your accountability of the academic program to improve learning. You can also conduct a summative assessment with a pre and post program level evaluation to demonstrate value added. And then this is a summative measure that is integrated with the student retained knowledge. I see some chats coming up. can you please maximize? Do you see my screen fully? Someone asked if I could.
No, actually, we are seeing only one a part of the screen occupying the presentation. You can blow it up and show as a full screen.
So I'm sharing my screen. I am screen.
Yeah, there are options at the bottom of the screen, the presentation. You
and
can
you
try
have
one
the
of that.
slide view, right?
Yeah.
So let me.
You can click on that and see.
Okay.
Now it's okay. Now it's much
okay.
better.
All right. So I got rid of this other feature, and now you're good, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that question. And I will try to monitor the chat box or questions coming in. So I appreciate that. All right. So this you can see fully. Wonderful. So when we talk about direct measures of student learning, right, we are looking at the end of program of study. And especially with the direct measure, you can utilize the pre and post, as I mentioned. And then typically outcomes are written, the learning outcomes are written to capture expected results of students' retained knowledge, right? And let me move this here so I can look at you as I talk. Okay, I think this is better. All right, so the learning outcomes, student learning outcome measures are typically stated as part of your program learning outcomes, but also they can be trickled down and embedded into your either modular or class level learning outcomes. And direct measurement results are typically used to support your continuous improvement processes at the university. Now, indirect measures, right? So I'm kind of talking about direct measures, indirect measures, and especially, let's see, I'm hoping this slide is better. So with the international programmatic accreditors, you will see that some put more emphasis on direct measures of learning, and the others put more emphasis on indirect measures of learning. So we talked about the direct measure. So coming to the indirect measure now, the examples could be, what is the perception? What is the feeling of a student about subjects and topics that they feel have learned throughout their academic experience at your institution? Now, indirect measures imply student learning by, employing self-reported data. And indirect measures, they actually help to substantiate instances of student learning, right? And then you get some indirect measures by using surveys, interviews, course evaluations, and then sometimes you're, of course, using reports on retention, graduation, and placement as indirect measure for your learning. So most often, in order to improve the quality of your academic programs, you are looking at a combination of direct and indirect measures, right, of student learning. So here's an example of a continuous improvement of a student learning cycle. And I'm sure if they're familiar with it. So you're starting from formulating your learning outcomes, right, at a program level. And then you move on next to identifying the goals, right? Objectives for each of the learning outcomes. And then you are going to come up with a plan for assessing and putting together an assessment process. So you implement that assessment plan, conduct the assessment, collect the data, analyze the data. And then once you have analyzed the data, you want to share those results with all the relevant stakeholders, right? Be it faculty, be it department chairs. Sometimes you share the results with your students. And then after having reviewed all the data and the results and analyzed, and after having had, of course, quality sample data and then trends identified, you are going to put together a plan for making changes to your curriculum, to your content, to the delivery of the content to your students. And then once you make those changes, of course, you start the cycle all over, right? In terms of assessment. The idea is when you make a change into a particular program or aspect of your program, did the changes have intended impact, right? So that's your whole continuous improvement cycle. Closing the loop is how, a number of the accreditors refer to the process. So as you know all too well, assessment of learning outcomes is a key requirement for both national institutional accreditation, and also international accreditation or specialized programmatic accreditation. There is a challenge of trying to find the right assessment tool. And I'm sure you want the tool to be flexible, right? That is also comprehensive. And then you want a tool that is affordable, and sometimes you want to have data that helps you to compare your students' results against the averages of your competitors or your like institutions or your peers. So, and today I'm going to talk about the Business Education Assessment Tool as a solution for measuring your student learning outcomes. So that would be measuring technical skills, right? Technical aspects of your student learning. If you wanted to look and assess soft skills of your learners, critical thinking, teamwork, and ability to make decisions, leadership, communication, we also have a tool called Value Skills. So here's, I'm going to be going into, okay, there is some information on accreditors. Okay. So as I mentioned, it is quite challenging to try to find a comprehensive, cost-effective, and a meaningful solution for evaluating your programmatic learning outcomes, right? And so we have created this tool, Global Business Education Assessment Exam tool, which allows you to conduct comparisons of your program's results to one or more external aggregate pools. So we have an average results for Indian schools. We have also an average of business programs for Asia, for Europe, or international schools. And there are also US different averages of institutions grouped by accreditor, by institutional characteristics, be it public, private, and so forth. So there's a wealth of data that you can really get good comparison of your results against to see where your students are. So with our solution, you are conducting, you are directly measuring students' retained knowledge, and then you're able to conduct not only internal analysis of your program, but meet the accreditor's requirements at the same time. One of the key features of our assessment tool is it's customizable. It's delivered online. It is a program level assessment solution that provides you with in-depth reporting and data analytics capabilities. And that will help you to satisfy your assurance of learning requirements. So Peregrine has a number of solutions to help you with solving and building a number of skills and competencies. So they pertain to critical thinking, problem solving, leadership, career management, and we have those solutions available. So feel free to visit our website and learn more about career readiness related solutions. And coming back to the Global Business Education Assessment Solution, this particular assessment is available in 7 different languages. So we have the basic US school-specific assessment exam solution, right? But then this is separate in the sense that we don't have US-centric questions. We have global examples, and it uses British English, which is closer to, of course, as an institutions. And then it's truly geared for schools, business schools that are located outside of the US, right? And you can use it for internal and external programmatic evaluation purposes. As I mentioned, it's customizable. And then with this tool, you will be able to comply with international accreditation requirements. And in terms of business programs, we work with all the major US-based and international accrediting agencies as listed here. AACSB, Association of BAs, ACBSB, IACB, and there are a few others we're working, but these are the ones that require assurance of learning and assessment data and analytics to be utilized in order to meet the accreditation requirements. So with our tool, you'll be able to meet their requirements as they relate to assurance of learning, right? So with the business education assessment tool that we offer you, some of the key features, as I mentioned, is customization, right? And you can build a specific assessment solution that actually aligns to your learning outcomes. So each program is unique, right? I'm sure you all have multiple different programs. Even within the same business school, you might have a program that focuses on accounting and finance more. And I know, Dr. Ravi, you're a finance professor yourself. Or some of the other business programs may focus more on marketing, you know, more on management, strategic thinking. So with with our tool, you'll be able to create multiple exams depending on your particular program's needs and, you know, specializations and so forth. We do offer you 12 business and management topics from which you can select and create an exam. And then for India, we have 3 India specific topics. And and I'll show you the list shortly. But in addition to that, if you have a very specific area or subject of focus in your program that may not be covered by our topics, you can provide to us your test bank. And then we'll be able to upload it and offer it as part of your assessment exam. So for example, in the US, we have Fashion Institute of Technology, right? And they have to have fashion merchandising. And they're going to be the only institution with that topic, right, offered on their assessment exam. So they have created their test bank questions, and you know we offer it as part of their overall assessment. And there's no way to compare, of course, their students' results against different aggregate pools of averages, but it's important to them, and we do it. So that's an example. You can integrate our GBE exam into your LMS if you use an LMS directly. So it helps your students to really access it without any, you know, going into external platforms. And the nice feature is there's an automatic gradebook posting. But if you don't use an LMS, we can provide you just a link to the exam, and that's also a seamless process too. We do have a separate undergraduate and graduate test banks. And when you sign up to use the service, you get access 24/7, unlimited access to your individual students' results, ability to generate reports through the client admin site. And we're more than happy to train any administrators from your school whom you designate to have access to your data. And once you get this, you know, free training, you're more than happy, and we're more than happy to help you, of course, to use the client admin site. I touched a little bit about on benchmarking of your performance scores with the other institutions based on institutional demographics, private, public, and so forth, and also regional and affiliations with accrediting organizations. So I know someone mentioned you are going through or seeking ACBSP accreditation. So we have an average of ACBSP accredited programs of student learning results based on GBE exam. I mentioned this is an online exam, and you do not have to employ proctoring. And that should save you, you know, anywhere from, depending on who you're employing, you know, $30 to $150 per student. And that we're able to deliver because of randomization of exam questions that are drawn from the test bank of thousands of questions. And then there are other safety and security features built into it that helps you to deliver the exam without a proctor. But I know a lot of the international programs, they have either a lab time or a, you know, certain block of their classroom time devoted to taking the Peregrine assessment exam, which works either way. So, but there are many flexible ways to conduct the exam, and then best practices I'd be happy to share with you. And I mentioned, you know, you can use a pre and post test construct, and we call it inbound and outbound approach. So I've mentioned we offer the GBE exam in 7 different languages, and they are here. Of course, British English is the core exam, and then German, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Mongolian, and Russian. So this is the list of the 13, I put 13 including the customs, but 12 core common business topics, and plus the custom topics. as you can see, it covers pretty much the breadth and width of a typical business program. And then each topic typically has anywhere from 4 to 8 subject areas. And then we can share with you a assessment exam summary document, which explains what are those subject areas that make up each of the topics, right? So if you are writing your learning outcomes for a particular program or for a course, the subjects are essentially the learning outcomes without the verbs. So you're going to use the Bloom's taxonomy verbs, I imagine, and depending on the different academic levels, you're going to use different levels. And then you can actually map our assessment exam content to your learning outcomes. And this is how you will, create your assessment exam. So, and I'll show you another slide where we talk about how to customize. So for the Indian schools, we have India-specific accounting. We also have India-specific business finance. We also have India-specific legal environment of business. So from the list of these 15 topics, you will be creating your customized assessment tool. As I mentioned, we have 4 to 8 subject areas that comprise each topic. And this is an example of the business integration and strategic management. And so these are the different subject areas. And the reason why I want to show you this is that when you run the reports will be broken out not only by topic, but also by subject level areas, which gives you a lot of insight into your students' results, into their performance levels, and you will be able to identify much better where your students might be performing on the level you want, but where they might be, underperforming. So that'll help you with your continuous improvement processes. I mentioned the inbound and outbound assessment approach. And essentially with undergraduate students, you can offer the pre-test, the inbound exam when they enter your program, and then offer the outbound exam when they complete the program. Typically, the outbound exam is offered as part of a capstone course. And some programs have internships. So there are multiple ways you can offer the outbound exam, and some offer it outside of the classroom or as part of a course. And then as you can imagine, the comparison of inbound and outbound exam scores provides you with that direct measure of student learning, right? The value added of your program to your students' knowledge base. And you can use this data, of course, for your continuous improvement work, but also you can use it for meeting your accreditor's requirements. On top of that, you can use the results for recruiting purposes. So for example, one program might be accepting students at say 60% at an inbound level, right? And then they graduate at 75%, which is already incredible level. So that's your student population, right? You accept students at that level and then you graduate them at a higher level. But then you might be another program where your students might be coming at 30% with an inbound exam, and you might be graduating them at 65%. But that's a really great success story of how much value added you are bringing to your students' knowledge base. And that's data and information worth sharing with your stakeholders. And if you have, prospective students that you reach out, or if you have partners that perhaps hire your students out of your program, you can use that information as a success story. And then I have mentioned the academic benchmarking a number of times, and especially for ACBSP, comparative data, comparing your students' results on assessment against other averages, and then setting your targets is one of the requirements. So an ability to benchmark your students' results against, say, all ACBSP accredited programs, for example, international programs, or all ACBSP accredited programs in Asia. And then as part of setting your targets, you can say, 80% of your students performing within 5 percentage points of the ACBSP accredited program average, or, once you find out where you are, you can move that target up and down. So this is all useful stuff to help you with your self-study reports for meeting your international accreditation requirements. And I do want to mention that we work very closely with all accreditors, as I mentioned. And then we are extremely familiar, and we consult schools on accreditation standards and guidelines, how to interpret them, and how to meet the requirements. So our assessment exam has been developed, and ACBSP has approved our assessment tool for their standard 4 measuring learning outcomes. And then we work very closely with IACB, which our tool has been designed to really help you with meeting those accreditors requirements, including ACBSP, IACB, and AACSB. Any questions so far? I know I'm giving a lot of information in one breath. All right, okay. I hope that means that so far it's clear, or it's just too much stuff. But let's go to a secure online delivery platform. So if you want to offer the exam to your students in a place, time, and space of their choosing, you're welcome to do that. And that is conducted because we do monitor students' IP addresses. We do monitor student activity. Each question is typed, and we disable the browser. We disable copy paste content functionalities. And as I mentioned, each exam's question is drawn from the test bank of questions in a randomized manner. So if I'm taking this test and my friend is also taking the test in Chennai, and at the same time, we will be on different topics and sections, or if we happen to be on the same topic, subject, and section, the chances are our questions will be different. And the questions are served one at a time without the option to backtrack. Students do have to confirm and record their answer in order to move forward. Depending on how many topics you selected to create an exam, if you've selected 15 topics, there will be 150 questions, 10 questions per topic on the exam. If you have selected 12 topics, it'll be a 120 question exam. And then students most likely will need to get this exam completed in more than one sitting if you're scheduling a time. So they can take a break, 2 breaks. They can also log out and log back in. So it's also quite flexible. And as it says here, from the time students register and start the exam, typically they can access the exam 3 times within the 48-hour window to complete the exam. And these are all flexible parameters, but most typically, when you open an exam, you'll ask your students to complete it within 48 hours. So as I mentioned, there are 2 breaks allowed, 2 15-minute breaks allowed. Each question is typically timed to 3 minutes. If you have students with disabilities or need some extra accommodations, we are able to do that. And there are 10 questions per topic. So as I mentioned, if it's 8-topic exam, then it's 80 question. If it's a 12-topic exam, it's 120 question. And when students complete the exam, they receive a completion certificate, which they can submit for academic accountability. But exam administrator will have full access to all the student results and data, the ability to track progress, and also ability to download the students' completion certificates. There are many best practices and ways to encourage students to perform well, to take the exam seriously. But with our international clients, I've noticed that our students take exams seriously and they really do their best. So we don't see that issue with international students as much. But in the US, we have sometimes encouraged programs to embed the exam into a course where students receive a grade for completing the exam. Typically, it's a credit, not grade grading, right? Because you are collecting data that's helpful to your program to assess your program. So you're not grading the student, but it's to encourage them to complete the exam, to do their best. We do encourage programs to incorporate into their course and then provide some rewards or some credits for completion. And as I mentioned, if you have an LMS, it could easily be integrated into your LMS. So we are Peregrine known for expansive reporting capabilities, and especially with the international accreditors, conducting the assessment is not enough, right? collecting the data is not enough. You need to really work with your data and understand why you see what you see. And also specifically with ACBSP and all the other accreditors, there's no such thing as bad results, right? It's all about, identifying or getting some performance indicators. And then more importantly, identifying areas of your weakness, right? And how do you mitigate that? How do you improve upon your results? So there's no such thing as good results and bad results. So in order to help you with evaluating the results, understanding the results, and use them efficiently as part of your continuous improvement efforts, we'll provide you with these reports. And I'll go briefly over them. And one of the first reports you'll run is individual students results report. So essentially that's, Excel file of all your students' results showing the % of questions students answered correctly for each topic and for each subject. And for those of you, if you want to see how individual students performed, especially for those students who might have taken our inbound exam, spent 2, 3, 4 years with you and completed the outbound exam, you can also create a pairwise report as well. For your programmatic evaluation, we provide you with, let's start with longitudinal analysis report. And that ties into your closing the loop processes, right? Especially with ACBSP, they require 3 data points as part of the self-study report. And then, and they want to hear from you how you're using the data along with other accreditors to make changes to improve upon results. So having this longitudinal analysis report, this trend analysis report really helps you to illustrate closing of the loop. Now, internal analysis report is going to be a report that you will definitely have to start with. So this shows you, of course, comparison of your inbound exam results to your outbound results. Or if you didn't do inbound, or if you're starting with outbound, it'll go into details of, where your students performed well and where they could perform. And so it goes into each individual topic and subject and shows you the analysis of means and analysis of the frequency of questions answered correctly. There are always executive summary versions of these reports available, especially if you want to share the results or the highlights with the higher ups or decision makers or funding agencies, so forth. But for your individual analytical purposes, and especially discussing results with your faculty, with your department chairs, you want to delve into the more detailed analysis. Now, external comparison report is a report where you will be comparing your students' results against one or more aggregate pools of comparison, right? And then those aggregate pools could be, all private, all Indian schools average, or all ACBSP accredited programs average, or all international private schools or public schools averages, and so forth. And then if you have multiple programs, or if you wanted to compare different student cohort groups against each other, you can run the program comparison report. So the idea here is, say you have your students with marketing specialization, right? And you have your students with accounting specialization. So are your accounting students performing at a higher level on accounting topics than your marketing students, and vice versa? So this program comparison report will show you that. And if you wanted to compare different student cohort groups, like in the US, we have some schools, students coming out of 2-year programs, community colleges, and the students who have gone through the entire 4-year program within the institution. If you wanted to compare their results against each other, you can run the student cohort comparison report. So once you have reviewed these reports and you want to understand knowledge gaps better, I would recommend then you can move into what we call the response distractor report. And this is a really unique report, and I'll come back to you to this report after finishing the other reports. We talked about direct measure and indirect measure of learning, right? Peregrine's exam is the GBE assessment exam is a direct measure of student learning, which is what many accreditors require, including ACBSP and IACB and AACSB as well. But AACSB also requires indirect measure of learning, and especially with the new round of their accreditation requirements, they have added that. So we offer you a complimentary student survey to attach to your Outbound exam. So it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. And then you provide us the questions that go into this student survey. And then I typically recommend don't put more than 5 to 10 questions. Well, even 10 is too much, 5 to 8 questions, because these questions will be offered before the exam on the Outbound exam. Nice thing is if an Outbound exam is a requirement, you're going to get 100% response rate on the student survey. But more importantly, you can include questions that get answers to your indirect measure of learning. And then you get a summary report of the indirect measure by running student survey report. So there's a grade scale report. If you use different scales, we can go into that. If you wanted to see statistical information for each of the different aggregates that Peregrine offers, you can run the aggregate extraction report. If you wanted to see which schools make up each of the different aggregates, you can run the client schools and aggregates report. This is what the dashboard for the client admin site looks like. And then here's a little more information on each of the different reports that we've just talked about. So you can see how easy this information is presented to you, how you can just go in and see, for example, this is a business ethics, and these are the different subject areas. And there's the comparison, the aggregate pool. In this case is outbound online delivery. So you're comparing your student results against all online programs, and then you have your results. So this is the example of a longitudinal report. I talked about program and cohort comparison, pairwise report. Let me say a few more words about the response distractor report, and I'll open the floor for the questions. So you have looked at all the different data and results, right? By topic, by subjects that make up each of these topics. And you have identified certain areas where your students did not perform as well as you would like them to see, especially if certain areas are your areas of focus, like finance and accounting, for example. If you're known for it, you want to make sure your students are performing on par or at a higher performance level than some of the aggregate pools of comparison. So now you can run this response distractor report to understand the reasons why students answered questions incorrectly based on what we call the response distractors. So what we did is we took our test bank questions. These are multiple choice questions. There's one correct answer and then 3 or 4 incorrect answers. So for each of the incorrect answers, we coded them to one of the types of response distractors. So are students answering questions incorrectly due to, say, as it's stated here, calculation-based error, concept-based error, conclusion-based error, fact-based error, or interpretation-based error. So we provide you a report with your student sample. And then in the next round of tables, we'll compare your students' results against the test bank sample, right? So are your students answering questions incorrectly at a higher frequency due to one of these response distractors than the frequency in the sample test bank? And then in the next round, we'll compare your results to an aggregate pool that you select to compare your students' results. So whenever there's a statistically significant difference between your sample and the test bank sample, or your sample and the aggregate pool sample, we highlight them for you. So for example, this is, does it say the topic, response distractor? Oh, this is a criminal justice example, which is okay. So, so this is a criminal justice topic. We also have CJ exams. And then your students, so this is percent of questions answered correctly, 57, wonderful. Percent of questions incorrect. So the students have 38% made fact-based errors, right? So that's, you know, you can come up with a solution to remedy. Maybe your students need a bit more review sessions to get those facts. And criminal justice, they do need to know the facts, right? And then say if students had a higher percent of questions answered correctly due to, you know, concept or conclusion-based error, right? So that would be indicating that your students would need assistance with critical thinking. Now, how do you improve that? Maybe in your courses and programs, you can add some hands-on activities, group activities. Maybe you can have assignments that provides them with an opportunity to hone those skills. So you can see how you can use the results of this report to not only identify knowledge gaps and see where those knowledge gaps might be due, and then helps you to come up with mitigation steps. So this is what the completion certificate looks like. And then I just want to review the key features of the business assessment exam and then answer your questions. So with the GBE, you can align our assessment exam to your learning outcomes by selecting from the existing 12 business and management topics plus 3 India-specific topics. You can integrate it into your LMS for seamless delivery of the exam to your students. We have undergraduate and graduate test banks, and you will have full access to your data results through the client admin site, and of course, an ability to generate all the multitudes of reports that I've just shared with you. If you wanted to benchmark your students' results against, other institutional averages, you can do that. We have multiple aggregate pools for comparison. And then you will be able to conduct the assessment if you choose so without a proctor. That saves you some, frees up some resources on your end. And then with one tool, you'll be able to meet international, national, and specialized programmatic accreditors requirements. So with that, I open the floor to your questions, and anything that's related to this particular assessment or an accreditation process or requirements or how to put. We also have an assurance of learning workshops that focus more on how to define and how to write your learning outcomes, and then how to put together your assessment plan and so forth. And we do have a really handy AOL workbook that helps you with that process. If any of you might be interested, I'd be more than happy to share with you a digital copy of that assurance of learning workbook. And it's quite extensive. It covers business and healthcare and all the other areas, but it gives you really good information as to the overall picture of AOL within the international accreditation context.
Okay, questions